Amanda Banks had 12 seconds before the man in the navy suit pulled the trigger and changed her life forever. Her reflection in the polished silverware showed a woman she barely recognized anymore, 28 years old, her jobs deep into survival mode, her natural hair pulled back into a bun so tight it gave her headaches. The uniform at Azure Dragon was supposed to make her look elegant, but the black polyester just made her invisible. Which was exactly how she'd survived 3 years serving Atlanta's most dangerous men their $1,000 meals. Before we go any further, pause for just 1 second. If you love powerful stories, forbidden choices, and moments that change lives forever, like this video right now. Subscribe to K Empire Stories, because the stories only get darker, deeper, and more intense from here. And share this video, because someone out there needs to hear this story tonight. The restaurant sat on Peachtree Street like a jewel box full of secrets. Outside, the September heat made the asphalt shimmer like water. Inside, everything was ice and steel and temperature control precision. Japanese minimalism meets Korean luxury. Black marble floors, paper lanterns casting shadows that looked like wings, and tables positioned so that every power player could watch every other power player without seeming to. Table 7 was always reserved for Kim Tae-young. Everyone knew who he was, even if no one said it out loud. The Korean newspapers called him a businessman. The Atlanta PD called him untouchable. The streets called him exactly what he was, the youngest head of the Kim syndicate in 3 generations. A man who consolidated power through strategy, so precise it looked like art. He sat with his back to the wall, always the wall, never the window. His charcoal suit probably worth more than Amanda's mama's mortgage. 29 years old, and carrying himself like he'd already lived 3 lifetimes. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that missed nothing, black hair styled with that effortless precision that costs money to achieve. His hands rested on the table, fingers long and elegant, manicured nails, a platinum watch that caught the light when he moved. Next to him, Marcus Bishop leaned back in his chair like he owned the building. He didn't. But his family owned half the distribution networks in the Southeast, so the distinction hardly mattered. Dark-skinned, handsome in that dangerous way that made smart women cross the street, wearing a smile that never reached his eyes. Amanda had been serving them for 45 minutes. Green tea, aged whiskey, appetizers they barely touched. The conversation was light, professional, the kind of negotiation that sounded like small talk unless you knew what to listen for. She knew what to listen for. 3 years of invisible service had taught her that silence was armor. That black women in spaces like this survived by being efficient, polite, and utterly forgettable. She poured water without spilling. She cleared plates without interrupting. She existed in the margins of their world, and that marginality kept her breathing. Until Marcus Bishop's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned, then stood. "Excuse me a moment. Business." Kim Tae-young nodded, his expression unchanged. Marcus walked toward the restroom hallway, phone pressed to his ear, and Amanda continued clearing their table because that's what invisible women do. But she watched. She always watched. That's how she saw the man in the navy suit enter through the kitchen entrance. How she noticed the bulge under his jacket that wasn't a wallet. How she caught the way his eyes locked onto table 7, with the focus of someone following orders. Her hands went cold. Atlanta wasn't new to violence. The city had been bleeding over territory for months. Korean syndicates pushing into traditionally black-controlled neighborhoods. Old alliances fracturing. New wars beginning. The Azure Dragon sat right in the middle of it all, neutral ground held together by money and mutually assured destruction. But neutral ground only worked when everyone respected it. The man in the navy suit clearly didn't. He was crossing the dining room now, moving with purpose, his hand sliding inside his jacket. 10 feet from table 7. 9. 8. Kim Tae-young was reading something on his phone, completely unaware. Amanda should have stayed invisible. Should have turned away, gone to the kitchen, let whatever was about to happen just happen. Men like Kim Tae-young didn't end up in her world by accident. They earned enemies. They built empires on bodies. Maybe he deserved this. But then she thought about her mama, working night shifts at Grady Hospital, her hands cracked from sanitizer, her back aching from bending over patients who couldn't afford better care. She thought about her little brother, 16 years old, and trying so hard to stay out of the streets, when the streets kept calling his name with promises of quick money and quicker death. She thought about mercy unearned and freely given. She thought, I can't just let someone die. So she moved. The tray was still in her hands, empty silver, weighing maybe 2 pounds. She swung it like her brother had taught her to swing a bat back when they still believed in little league and safe neighborhoods. The edge caught the man in navy across his forearm just as he pulled the gun. The weapon clattered to the floor. Time fractured. The man's eyes met hers, shocked, furious, and then his fist was coming toward her face. She tried to dodge, but she wasn't fast enough. The impact snapped her head sideways, sent her stumbling into Table 7's white tablecloth. Crystal glasses shattered on marble. Whiskey spread like blood. Then the gunshot. It was louder than anything she'd ever heard. A crack that split the air and made her ears ring. She felt the impact before she understood what happened. A punch to her left shoulder that spun her around and drove her to her knees. No pain at first. Just pressure. Just the sensation of something fundamentally wrong with her body. She looked down and saw red spreading across her uniform. Dark against the black fabric. Warm. Wet. Too much of it. Oh, she thought distantly. I've been shot. The dining room erupted into chaos. Screams. Chairs scraping. People running. Through the haze of shock, Amanda saw Kim Tae-young move. He was fast. Inhumanly fast. The man in navy suit tried to retrieve his fallen gun, but Tae-young was already there. A kick that connected with surgical precision, sending the weapon skittering across the marble. Then Tae-young's hand was on the man's throat, slamming him against the wall with enough force to crack the decorative tile. No wasted movement. No excess violence. Just efficient, terrifying control. Tae-young said something in Korean. Low, cold, each word sharp as a blade. The man in navy tried to answer, but Tae-young's grip tightened, cutting off air. English, Tae-young said, his accent slight but present. So she can understand. He meant her. Through her fading vision, Amanda saw Tae-young turn his head slightly, those dark eyes finding hers on the floor. Something flickered across his face. Not quite emotion. More like calculation shifting into something else. Who sent you? Tae-young asked the man, still looking at her. The man gasped, clawing at Tae-young's hand. Bishop! Marcus Bishop said you'd be alone. The revelation hung in the air like poison. Marcus Bishop. The man who'd been sitting at table 7 5 minutes ago. The man who'd left right before an assassin arrived. The coincidence was too perfect, too planned. Tae-young's expression didn't change, but Amanda saw his jaw tighten. Saw the muscle jump beneath his skin. Saw something dark and absolute settle into his features. He looked back at the man in navy. Wrong answer. The snap was audible even over the chaos. The man went limp. Tae-young let him drop. Then he was beside Amanda, kneeling, his hands, those elegant, manicured hands, pressing against her shoulder. The pressure made the pain finally arrive, a white-hot scream that tore through her chest. She gasped, tried to pull away, but his grip was firm. Don't move! His voice was different now. Not cold. Not warm. Something else entirely. You're losing too much blood. I'm fine. she managed, which was obviously a lie. Her vision was tunneling, darkness creeping in from the edges. You took a bullet meant for me. His eyes locked onto hers, and she saw something in them she couldn't name. That's not fine. That's... He stopped, switched to Korean, barking orders at someone she couldn't see. Amanda tried to focus, but the world was tilting. Sounds became distant. The last thing she registered was being lifted, strong arms beneath her, the smell of expensive cologne and gunpowder, and Taeyoung's voice, still speaking Korean, but the tone unmistakable. Absolute. Furious. Final. A declaration of war without saying a word in English. Then nothing. Welcome back, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Before we dive deeper, make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Every click, every share, every bit of support helps us keep bringing you these dangerous love stories and high-stakes betrayals. So settle in, dim those lights, and let's continue. Amanda woke up in a bed that wasn't hers, in a room that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Atlanta's skyline. Furniture that was minimalist but expensive, all clean lines and dark wood. The sheets beneath her felt like water against her skin, thread count higher than her credit score. Her shoulder screamed when she tried to sit up. Don't! A voice from the corner. Female, sharp, professional. The stitches will tear. She turned her head, carefully, and saw a woman in her 40s, Korean, wearing scrubs and an expression that suggested she'd seen worse than this. A doctor, Amanda realized. Private. The kind who didn't ask questions. Where am I? Her throat felt like sandpaper. Somewhere safe. The doctor approached with a tablet, checking readings Amanda couldn't interpret. The bullet went through your shoulder. Clean trajectory. Missed the bone, but you lost a lot of blood. You're lucky. Lucky wasn't the word Amanda would have used. How long was I out? 18 hours. Mr. Kim wanted you monitored continuously. She said his name like it carried weight. Like disappointing him would have consequences. I need to go home. My mama has been contacted. She thinks you're staying with a friend after a minor car accident. She's been updated every 4 hours on your condition. The doctor's expression softened slightly. Mr. Kim was very specific about keeping your family informed without alarming them. Amanda tried to process that. Kim Taeyoung, a man she'd served whiskey to, a man whose world was violence and power, had thought about her mother's peace of mind. Why? The doctor smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's a question for Mr. Kim. She left, and Amanda was alone with Atlanta's skyline and a shoulder that throbbed in time with her heartbeat. She examined the room more carefully. No personal items. No photos. Just expensive emptiness and a door that might or might not be locked. She was testing her ability to stand when the door opened. Kim Taeyoung entered like he belonged everywhere he went. He changed clothes, black pants, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms marked with scars Amanda hadn't noticed before. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd recently showered. He carried himself with that same controlled precision, but there was something different now. He was looking at her like she was a problem he hadn't solved yet. You're awake. He closed the door behind him, didn't move closer. Kept distance between them, like he wasn't sure what proximity would mean. You kidnapped me. I saved you. There's a difference. Amanda tried to cross her arms, but her shoulder protested. You don't get to decide that. Take me home. No. The flatness of his refusal sent a spike of anger through her exhaustion. Excuse me? Marcus Bishop knows you interfered. Knows you heard his man's confession before he died. Knows you're a witness to his betrayal. Taeyoung moved to the window, his back to her, hands in his pockets. Going home means dying. Probably within 24 hours. Possibly taking your family with you. Ice flooded her veins. My family is being watched by my people. 24-hour security that they won't notice because my people are good at being invisible. He turned to face her, and his expression was carved from stone. Marcus Bishop wants me dead. He orchestrated a hit in neutral territory, breaking every code we have. That means he's either desperate or backed by someone powerful enough to ignore consequences. That's not my problem. You made it your problem when you swung that tray. The truth of it settled over her like a weight. She'd chosen this. Not the bullet, not the kidnapping, but the moment she decided to move instead of staying frozen. The moment she'd valued a stranger's life over her own safety. Why did you do it? Tae-young asked, his voice softer now. You don't know me. I'm exactly what you think I am. Dangerous, criminal, someone your mother probably warned you about. So why risk your life? Amanda thought about her answer. The real answer. Not the noble one, but the true one. Because I'm tired of watching people die when I can help. My mama works in a hospital where people die because they can't afford insulin. My brother's friends keep dying over street corners that don't belong to them. I'm 28 years old, and I've been to 16 funerals in 5 years. She met his eyes. So when I see someone about to die, and I have 12 seconds to choose, I choose differently. Even if it's stupid. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite emotion, but close. It was stupid, he agreed. It was also the most courageous thing I've seen in years. Courage or stupidity. People always confuse the two. Not me. He moved closer now, each step deliberate. I know the difference. And what you did was courage. He stopped 3 feet away. Close enough that Amanda could see the exhaustion beneath his controlled exterior. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that reminded her of rain and steel. I owe you a debt, he said quietly. In my world, that's not something taken lightly. I don't want your debt. I want to go home. And I want you alive. The intensity in his voice startled her. Those aren't compatible right now. So what? I'm your prisoner? You're my responsibility. He pulled something from his pocket, her phone. Your mother called 6 times. Your brother called twice. Your manager at Azure Dragon called once to fire you for causing a disturbance. His jaw tightened. I handled the manager. Your job is secure when you're ready to return. Your mother and brother believe you're safe. And you are? As long as you stay here. Amanda stared at her phone, at this man who'd somehow inserted himself into every aspect of her life in 18 hours. I don't even know you. My name is Kim Tae-young. I'm 29 years old. I run the Kim Syndicate in the Southeast. I don't apologize for what I do because apologizing implies I have a choice, and men like me don't get choices. We get obligations. He handed her the phone. That's all you need to know for now. That's not nearly enough. No, he agreed. But it's all I'm willing to give until I figure out who wants me dead and why you're brave enough to stop them. The honesty of it disarmed her. She'd expected threats or manipulation. Not this strange, careful truth. How long do I have to stay here? Until it's safe. And when will that be? His smile was cold and sharp. When everyone who wants you dead is no longer capable of wanting anything. The promise in those words should have terrified her. Should have sent her running for that door, consequences be damned. Instead, she found herself asking, what happens now? Now you rest. Tomorrow we talk strategy. He moved toward the door, then paused. There's food in the kitchen. Clothes in the closet that should fit. Don't try to leave. My people are under orders to keep you here, gently if possible, firmly if necessary. And if I insist? He looked back at her, and what Amanda saw in his eyes made her breath catch. Not cruelty. Not coldness. Something else entirely. Possession, maybe. Or protection. Or both tangled together, so completely they became the same thing. Then I'll apologize for what comes next and do it anyway. He opened the door. Get some rest, Amanda. You're going to need it. He knew her name. Of course he knew her name. Men like Kim Tae-young knew everything about people who entered their orbit. The door closed, and she was alone again with her thoughts, and a shoulder that throbbed, and a phone full of messages from a life that suddenly felt very far away. She should have been terrified. She should have been plotting escape. Instead, she fell asleep thinking about the way he'd said her name. Like it mattered. Like she mattered. Like the invisible black woman who'd served him whiskey for 3 years had suddenly become visible in ways she didn't understand yet. But would. The penthouse, because of course it was a penthouse, became Amanda's gilded cage for 3 days. Tae-young appeared once every 12 hours, like clockwork. Morning and evening. Each visit lasted exactly 15 minutes. He'd ask about her shoulder, verify she had everything she needed, update her on her family's safety, then leave. He never sat. Never stayed longer than necessary. Maintained distance like it was strategy. On the 4th day, he brought company. The man who entered with Tae-young was older, maybe 50, with silver threading through his black hair and eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. He moved with the authority of someone who'd earned respect through decades of survival. Amanda Banks, Tae-young said, gesturing to the man. This is Park Jin-woo, my father's advisor and the closest thing I have to family. Park bowed slightly, a gesture that somehow felt sincere despite the formality. Ms. Banks, thank you for saving his life. I didn't. Amanda started, but Park raised a hand. You did. And in doing so, you disrupted something we've been investigating for months. He pulled out a tablet, tapped a few commands, then turned it toward her. The screen showed Marcus Bishop. But not alone. He was meeting with men she didn't recognize. White men in expensive suits. The photos were surveillance quality, grainy, taken from distance, but clear enough to see money changing hands. Documents being signed. Marcus Bishop, Park said, his accent thicker than Tae-young's, has been working with the Calabrese family. Italian mob out of New York, trying to expand into the southeast. They want our territory. Our businesses. Our infrastructure. Why tell me this? Amanda asked, looking between them. Tae-young moved to the window, his back to them. Because you're involved now. Whether you want to be or not. And I don't believe in keeping allies in the dark. I'm not your ally. I'm your prisoner. Semantics. Park smiled, but it wasn't warm. Mr. Kim prefers to think of you as protected rather than imprisoned. Again, he doesn't get to decide that. Tae-young turned from the window, and his expression was harder than she'd seen it. Actually, I do. Because the alternative is you dead in an alley somewhere, and I find I have difficulty accepting that outcome. The admission hung in the air between them. Park cleared his throat. What Mr. Kim is trying to say is that your interference revealed a plot we suspected but couldn't prove. Marcus Bishop's betrayal. The Calabrese involvement. They've been planning this for at least 6 months. The hit at Azure Dragon was supposed to look like random violence, destabilize our operations, create chaos they could exploit. But I ruined it. You complicated it, Tae-young corrected. They know we know now. Which means they'll accelerate their timeline. Accelerate to what? War. The word came out flat, absolute. Full-scale war between the Kim Syndicate and the Bishop Calabrese Alliance. Hundreds dead. Maybe thousands if it spreads to other cities. Amanda looked at this man, this beautiful, dangerous man who spoke about mass death like he was discussing quarterly earnings, and felt something crack open in her chest. You can't let that happen. I can't stop it. Not alone. His eyes met hers. But I can control how it happens. Where it happens. Who survives it. And you need me for that. Park answered before Tae-yoon could. We need you alive. You're leverage. A witness who can testify if this goes legal, though it won't. More importantly, you're symbolic. A civilian caught in crossfire, saved by Mr. Kim. It changes the narrative. Makes him look protective instead of aggressive when he retaliates. The calculation of it made her stomach turn. So I'm a prop. You're a person, Tae-yoon said sharply, silencing Park with a look. A person who made a choice that saved my life. A person who deserves to survive the consequences of that choice. Everything else is secondary. He moved closer, and Amanda saw the exhaustion etched into his features. The weight he carried in the set of his shoulders. He looked like a man fighting a war on every front, including against himself. I'm going to destroy them, he said quietly. Marcus Bishop. The Calabrese family. Everyone who thought they could kill me in neutral territory and face no consequences. It won't be clean. It won't be quick. And innocent people will probably die because that's what happens in wars. He crouched in front of her, bringing himself eye level despite the pain it clearly caused his knees. This close, she could see faint scars on his jaw, the shadow of sleeplessness under his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly before he controlled them. But you won't be one of them. I promise you that. Whatever it costs, whoever I have to kill, you and your family will survive this. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why does it matter so much? People must take bullets in your world all the time. Not for me. Not when they have nothing to gain from it. His gaze held hers, intense enough to burn. You're the first person in 10 years who's looked at me and seen someone worth saving instead of something to use. That matters. You matter. The confession settled over her like a weight. Park coughed awkwardly. Perhaps I should give you two some privacy. No. Tae-yoon stood abruptly, the moment shattering. We have work to do. Amanda needs to understand what's coming. The next hour was a master class in organized crime. Park laid out the structure of the Kim Syndicate, businesses both legal and illegal, alliances across the Southeast, the delicate balance of power that kept Atlanta from descending into chaos. Then he showed Amanda how Marcus Bishop had been systematically destabilizing that balance. Bribing city officials. Turning Kim loyalists. Feeding information to the Calabrese family. He's been planning this since before I took over, Tae-yoon said, pointing to a timeline on the tablet. When my father died 2 years ago, Marcus thought the transition would be weak. Thought I was too young, too American, too soft. Are you? Amanda asked. His smile was a blade. Marcus is about to find out. On the 5th day, Tae-yoon brought Amanda to the training room. The penthouse basement had been converted into something between a gym and an armory. Punching bags hung from reinforced beams. Weights organized with military precision. And against the far wall, a gun case that held enough weapons to start a small war. If you're going to be in my world, Tae-yoon said, unlocking the case, you need to know how to survive it. I don't want to be in your world. And yet here you are. He selected a compact pistol, checked it with practiced efficiency. Wanting and needing aren't the same thing. Right now, you need to learn how to protect yourself. Amanda crossed her arms, wincing as her healing shoulder protested. I'm not killing anyone. I'm not asking you to kill. I'm asking you to survive. He turned to her, the gun held carefully at his side. There's a difference. Is there? In your world? In every world. He gestured to the shooting range set up at the far end of the room. 30 minutes. Basic training. If you hate it, we stop. But at least you'll know which end of a gun to point when someone tries to kill you. The logic was sound, even if she hated it. For the next 30 minutes, Tae-young taught her to shoot. His body pressed against her back as he adjusted her stance, his hands covering hers as he showed her how to grip the weapon, his voice low and patient in her ear as he talked her through breathing, aiming, firing. It was the closest they'd been since he carried her out of Azure Dragon. Amanda tried to focus on the target downrange, a paper silhouette that looked disturbingly human. But all she could think about was the solid weight of him against her, the way his breath ghosted across her neck, the contrast between his gentle hands and the deadly weapon they were guiding. "Breathe," he murmured. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. Squeeze on the exhale." She did. The gun kicked. The bullet punched through the target's shoulder. "Better." His approval was warm against her ear. "Again." They spent an hour like that. Her shooting, him correcting her form. The intimacy of violence and instruction blurring together until she couldn't tell which was which. When they finally stopped, her shoulder ached and her hands trembled, and she'd put 15 rounds into the target's center mass. "You're a natural," Tae-young said, and there was something in his tone that made her pulse quicken. "Or maybe just motivated to learn. Motivated by self-preservation. That's the best motivation there is." He took the gun from her hands, set it aside carefully. Then he turned to her, and the intensity in his gaze made breathing difficult. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "About what's going to happen. About what I'm planning. Okay. Marcus Bishop is meeting with the Calabrese family in 3 days. A summit. Finalizing their alliance. Signing contracts for territory division." His jaw tightened. "I'm going to interrupt that meeting." "How?" "Violently." No hesitation. No apology. "I'm going to walk in with 20 of my best men and make it clear that betraying me has consequences." "You mean you're going to kill them?" "Yes." The honesty of it punched through her. No euphemisms. No pretty words. Just the brutal truth of what he was. "And you're telling me this because I want you to understand what kind of man I am before you make any decisions about staying." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "I'm not good, Amanda. I'm not a hero. I'm a man who builds power on fear and violence and the willingness to do things that would make you sick." He stopped inches away, close enough that she could see the gold flecks hidden in his dark eyes. "But I'm also a man who keeps his promises. And I promise to keep you alive. That promise stands. Whether you hate me for what I'm about to do or not." Amanda should have been horrified. Should have been planning escape. Should have seen this confession for what it was, a warning that she was standing next to a monster. Instead, she heard herself ask, "What do you need from me?" His eyes widened fractionally, surprise breaking through his control. "Need from you? You're telling me this for a reason. You want something. What is it?" He studied her for a long moment, something unreadable moving across his features. Then he reached out, his fingers brushing her jaw with unexpected gentleness. "I need you to trust me. For 3 more days. Just 3 days. And then, if you want to leave, if you want nothing to do with me or my world, I'll let you go. Full protection for your family. Money to relocate if you want. A clean break. And if I don't want to leave?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Tae-young's thumb traced her jawline, the touch feather-light but possessive. "Then we'll figure out what that means. Together. You're asking me to wait while you go commit mass murder?" "Yes." "That's insane." "Probably." His smile was slight, almost sad. "But insanity is all I have to offer right now." Amanda should have said no. Should have demanded he let her go, take her chances, live her life away from this dangerous, beautiful man who spoke about death like it was poetry. But she thought about Marcus Bishop. About the man in the navy suit who tried to kill Tae-young in a restaurant full of civilians. About the casual way they'd put a bullet in her without even knowing her name. She thought about being invisible her whole life. About serving powerful men and being ignored. About watching the world spin around her while she existed in the margins, powerless and forgotten. She thought about the way Tae-young looked at her. Like she was visible. Like she mattered. Like the choice she'd made in those 12 seconds had changed something fundamental between them. 3 days, she heard herself say. But I want updates. I want to know what's happening. No more treating me like I'm fragile. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe? Or desire? Or both? Deal? His hand dropped from her face, but the absence of his touch felt like loss. Come on! I'll show you how this world really works. Welcome back, fierce hearts. I know you're probably screaming at Amanda right now, telling her to run. But would you? Really? When someone looks at you like you're the answer to a question they didn't know they were asking? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We're just getting to the good part. The next 3 days were an education for Amanda Banks. Tae-young kept his promise. He showed her everything. The legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, import companies that funded the empire. The illegitimate ones, gambling, protection, substances she didn't want to think too hard about, that sustained it. The network of loyalty and fear that kept it all running. He introduced her to his people. Park Jin-woo, who she'd already met. Lee Min-ho, his head of security, a man built like a tank with eyes like a hawk. Kim Yuna, his accountant, a woman in her 60s, who could make money disappear and reappear like magic. They all treated Amanda with careful respect. Not because she'd earned it, but because Tae-young had declared she mattered. And in his world, his word was law. On the second day, he took her to see her family. Not in person. Too dangerous, he said. But he had surveillance set up, benign, protective, invisible. They watched from a van parked 2 blocks away as her mama left for her shift at the hospital. As her brother walked to school with friends, laughing about something on his phone. They looked normal. Safe. Unaware that 20 of Tae-young's men were positioned around them, ready to die to keep them that way. Why? Amanda asked, watching her mama climb into her old Honda. Why spend this many resources on people you don't know? Tae-young was silent for a long moment. Then, because you would die for them. That makes them worth protecting. The simplicity of his logic undid something in her chest. On the 3rd day, he brought her to the war room. It wasn't actually called that, but that's what it was. A conference room in a downtown building the Kim Syndicate owned. Maps on the wall showing territory. Photographs of Marcus Bishop and his associates. A timeline of the betrayal laid out in meticulous detail. 20 men filled the room. Hard men with harder eyes. Soldiers. Enforcers. Killers. They all stood when Tae-young entered. He gestured for them to sit, then pointed to Amanda. This is Amanda Banks. She saved my life. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. The message was clear. The threat implicit. Then he laid out the plan. The Calabrese meeting was set for midnight at the Venetian Club, a restaurant Marcus Bishop owned on the outskirts of town. Tae-young had intel on the layout, the security, the attendees. He detailed the approach, 4 teams entering from different angles. Timed to the second. Coordinated to minimize civilian casualties. It was surgical. Precise. Terrifying in its efficiency. Questions? Tae-young asked when he finished. Lee Min-ho raised a hand. What about police response? Handled. We have 45 minutes before the first unit arrives. That's more than enough time. Witnesses. The Venetian closes at 11 on Wednesdays. Marcus reserved the entire restaurant for his meeting. No civilians. No witnesses except the people we want to send a message to. And if the Calabres bring more soldiers than we expect? Tae-young's smile was cold. Then we adapt. I don't plan on dying tonight, Min-ho. And I don't leave soldiers behind. The loyalty in the room was palpable. These men would follow him into hell without hesitation. Because he'd walk in first. After the meeting, when the room had emptied, Tae-young turned to Amanda. Last chance to change your mind. To ask me to stop. Would you? If I asked? He considered it. Really considered it. No. Marcus Bishop tried to kill me in neutral territory. Put a bullet in you. That demands a response. If I let it slide, I look weak. And weakness invites more attacks. More death. So this is inevitable. This has been inevitable since the moment that man pulled a gun in Azure Dragon. His eyes met hers. I'm just choosing when and where it happens. Control the chaos or be controlled by it. That's a depressing philosophy. It's the only philosophy that keeps people like me alive. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the empty room. But you make me want something different. Something better. I just don't know if better is possible for men like me. Amanda reached out before she could stop herself, her fingers brushing his jaw. He went very still, like he was afraid any movement might shatter the moment. Maybe it is, she said softly. Maybe you just need someone to believe it's possible. And is that someone you? She should have said no. Should have stepped back, maintained distance, remembered that this man was about to commit murder in her name. Instead, she said, Ask me again in 3 days. When this is over. His hand came up, covering hers against his face. 3 days. I can do 3 days. He leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers, and they stood like that, suspended in a moment that felt both endless and too brief. His breath mixed with hers. His heartbeat visible in the pulse at his throat. Then his phone buzzed. The spell broke. He checked it, his expression hardening. It's time. I need to go. Be careful. The words escaped before she could stop them. Soft. Worried. More revealing than she intended. Tae-young's eyes softened. I'm always careful. It's how I've survived this long. He squeezed her hand, then let go. Park will stay with you. Don't leave the building. Don't answer the door. Don't. I know. Stay safe. Survive. She forced a smile she didn't feel. Go do what you have to do. He studied her for a long moment, like he was memorizing her face. Then he leaned in, pressed a kiss to her forehead, brief, gentle, devastating, and walked away. Amanda watched him go, this dangerous, beautiful man who'd inserted himself into her life and promised to burn the world to keep her safe. And she prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore that he'd come back alive. The waiting was worse than anything Amanda had experienced. Park stayed with her in the penthouse, his presence professional and distant. He didn't talk about what was happening. Didn't check his phone obsessively like she wanted to. Just sat reading a book in Korean while she paced, and tried not to imagine Tae-young bleeding out in some restaurant parking lot. Midnight came and went. 12:30. 1 a.m. At 1:15, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her swipe accept. Amanda Banks? A voice she didn't recognize. Male. Accented. This is Detective Wilson, Atlanta PD. We need you to come to the station. We have some questions about an incident at Azure Dragon 5 days ago. Her blood went cold. I I already gave my statement. New information has come to light. We'd like to speak with you in person. Park was watching her now, his expression alert. I'm not feeling well. Can it wait until tomorrow? This really can't wait, Miss Banks. We can send a car. No. Too sharp. She tried to modulate her tone. I'll come in the morning. First thing. She hung up before he could respond. What was that? Park asked. Police. Asking about Azure Dragon. Her hands were shaking. That's not normal, is it? They don't usually call witnesses at 1 a.m. Park's expression went grim. No. They don't. He pulled out his phone, dialed rapidly. Spoke in Korean, his tone urgent. Then he looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her stomach drop. That wasn't a real detective. The Calabres are trying to isolate you. Draw you out. How do you know? Because Atlanta PD doesn't have a Detective Wilson. He stood, moving to the window, scanning the street below. And because Taeyong just confirmed the Calabres brought more soldiers than expected to the meeting. They're creating a diversion. Splitting our resources. Is he okay? Park didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. He's alive. But the situation is complicated. They need to extract. And they can't do that if they're worried about you being grabbed while they're occupied. So what do we do? Park looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, Amanda saw genuine fear in his eyes. We run. The next 30 minutes were chaos. Park moved with efficiency born of decades surviving in dangerous spaces. He grabbed a go bag Amanda hadn't known existed, weapons, cash, fake IDs, and hustled her toward the service elevator. Where are we going? She asked as they descended into underground parking. Somewhere they won't think to look. Somewhere. The elevator shuddered to a stop. Between floors. Park's hand went to his weapon. That's not mechanical. The emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in red. Then the doors pried open, and 3 men stood in the gap. Armed. Professional. Wearing expressions that suggested mercy wasn't on the table. Ms. Banks, the one in front said, his accent marking him as Calabrese. You're coming with us. Park moved. He was 50 years old, but he fought like time hadn't touched him. The first man went down with a broken nose. The second took a bullet to the leg. But the third got a shot off before Park could stop him. The bullet caught Park in the chest. He went down hard, blood spreading across his white shirt. No! Amanda dropped beside him, her hands pressing against the wound, but there was too much blood, too much damage. Park looked up at her, his eyes already glazing. Run! He gasped. Stairs. East corridor. Taeyong will. He didn't finish. The light went out of his eyes, and he was gone. Hands grabbed her, hauling her upright. She struggled, screamed, fought with everything she had. But there were 3 of them, and one of her and her shoulder was still healing in. A cloth pressed over her mouth and nose. Chemical smell. Sweet and wrong. The world tilted. Darkness swallowed her whole. Amanda woke up in a basement that smelled like mold and blood. Her wrists were zip-tied to a chair. Her shoulders screaming. Her head pounding from whatever they'd used to knock her out. The space was concrete and shadows. A single bulb overhead casting harsh light that made everything look like a crime scene waiting to happen. Marcus Bishop sat across from her, looking nothing like the charming businessman she'd served at Azure Dragon. His expensive suit was rumpled. His eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man watching his empire crumble in real time. Amanda Banks, he said, her name sounding wrong in his mouth. The waitress who couldn't mind her own business. Let me go. I will. Eventually. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. But first, you're going to tell me everything Kim Taeyong told you. Every plan. Every safe house. Every contact. I don't know anything. Yes, you do. You've been living with him for 5 days. You've met his people. Seen his operations. Marcus's smile was ugly. And you're going to tell me everything, or I'm going to start sending pieces of you to him until he comes out of whatever hole he's hiding in. Terror flooded through her, cold and absolute. He'll kill you for this. He's going to try. That's the point. I need him desperate. Angry. Making mistakes. Marcus stood, pulled out a knife that caught the light. So the question is, how many pieces of you am I going to have to cut off before he makes that mistake? Amanda's mind raced. She thought about the training room. About Taeyong's voice in her ear, breathe, aim, survive. About the way he'd taught her to assess situations, find weaknesses, create opportunities. Marcus was close now. Too close. Overconfident. The zip ties cut into her wrists, but they weren't impossible. Just tight. And her hands, though bound, could still move. She waited. Counted heartbeats. Let Marcus lean in with his knife. Let him think she was helpless. Then she moved. Her head snapped forward, forehead connecting with his nose. The crack was audible. Blood spurted. Marcus stumbled back, cursing, and Amanda twisted, leveraging her weight against the chair. It tipped, taking her with it, but the impact broke one of the legs. Wood splintered. Her hands were still bound, but now she had leverage. She didn't have time to free herself completely. The door was already opening, Marcus's men responding to his shouts. But she grabbed the broken chair leg, sharp, jagged, and when the first man came through, she drove it into his thigh with everything she had. He went down screaming. The second man raised his gun, but Amanda was already moving, using the first man's body as a shield, her bound hands grabbing for his weapon. The basement door exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. The hinges blew apart in a shower of wood and metal, and through the smoke stepped Kim Taeyong. He looked like war personified. Blood on his face and suit. Weapon in hand. Eyes absolutely feral. Behind him, 4 of his men. Lee Min-ho. Others she'd seen in the war room. Moving with lethal coordination. Amanda. Taeyong's voice cut through the chaos. Down! Now! She dropped. Gunfire erupted. It was over in seconds. Marcus's men didn't stand a chance against soldiers who'd been training for war their entire lives. The basement became a slaughterhouse, efficient and brutal. Then Taeyong was beside her, cutting her zip ties with a knife that appeared in his hand like magic. Are you hurt? His hands were on her face, her arms, checking for damage with desperate efficiency. I'm okay. Park. I know. His jaw tightened. I know. Min-ho told me. I tried to save him. You did. You survived. That's what he wanted. Taeyong pulled her close, his embrace fierce and brief. Can you walk? Yes. Good. Because we're not done yet. He hauled her upright, and that's when Amanda saw Marcus Bishop. On his knees. Bleeding from his broken nose, surrounded by Taeyong's men. Looking at his own mortality with the clarity of someone who knew death was coming. Clarification number 1: the capture. You're wondering how they got me, Taeyong said, reading her expression. His eyes never left Marcus. They didn't. I walked in here willingly. Traded myself for your location. Amanda's breath caught. What? They grabbed you. Sent proof to the Venetian Club. Told me they'd start cutting pieces off if I didn't come alone. His smile was cold and sharp. So I came alone. Except alone is a relative term when your people know how to track you and Min-ho has no regard for orders that might get me killed. Lee Min-ho grunted from across the room. 30 years I've been keeping you alive, boss. Wasn't about to stop now. You walked into a trap, Amanda said. For me. You took a bullet for me, Tae-young countered. Fair trade. Marcus laughed, the sound bitter and broken. How touching. The killer has a heart after all. Tae-young's expression didn't change. No, I really don't. But I keep my promises. And I promised her she'd survive. He turned to Amanda, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. I need you to leave now. Go with Min-ho. What happens next, you don't need to see it. Tae-young, please. The word came out rough, almost desperate. I've already made you see too much. Let me have this. Let me keep you from seeing the worst of what I am. She should have argued. Should have insisted on staying. But the plea in his voice, the genuine need to protect her from witnessing what came next, undid her. She nodded, kissed his cheek, whispered, Come back to me. Always. Lee Min-ho escorted her out, and the last thing Amanda saw was Tae-young kneeling in front of Marcus Bishop, picking up the knife Marcus had intended to use on her, his expression absolutely empty of mercy. The door closed. Amanda never asked what happened in that basement after she left. She didn't need to. Marcus Bishop's body was found 3 days later, and even the hardened homicide detectives who'd seen everything Atlanta had to offer turned pale when they processed the scene. The message was clear: you don't touch what's his. End of clarification number 1. Welcome back, fierce hearts. Things just got darker, didn't they? But this is what happens when you choose visibility. When you matter to someone powerful. The world doesn't get safer, you just get stronger. And Amanda? She's about to discover exactly how strong she can become. Edition number 2 showing the war. 3 weeks after Marcus Bishop died, the Calabrese family retaliated. It started with a warehouse fire on the south side. One of Tae-young's legitimate operations, a furniture import business that employed 40 people. They torched it at 3 a.m. when no one was there, a warning shot that said, "We can hurt you without killing civilians." Tae-young responded by cutting off their access to the ports. Suddenly, shipments disappeared. Containers went missing. The Calabrese lost $2 million in product over a weekend. Then the Calabrese hit one of Tae-young's restaurants. Smashed windows. Terrified customers. Sent 3 of his people to the hospital. And that's when Tae-young made his mistake. He went after their money laundering operation personally, taking Lee Min-ho and 6 soldiers. Left Amanda in the penthouse with reduced security because most of his people were engaged in various operations across the city. The Calabrese were waiting. They planned for his retaliation, anticipated his targets, and set a trap that nearly worked. Tae-young's team walked into an ambush at a strip mall in Buckhead. 12 Calabrese soldiers with automatic weapons, and no hesitation about using them in public. The firefight lasted 7 minutes. An eternity. Lee Min-ho took a bullet to the shoulder. 2 of Tae-young's soldiers went down. And Tae-young himself caught shrapnel from a grenade that turned a parked car into shredded metal. He made it back to the penthouse at 4 a.m., bleeding, limping, and more furious at himself than Amanda had ever seen him. "This is what happens," he said, letting her help him onto the couch. "This is what I wanted to protect you from. The consequences of pride and rage and—" "Stop." Amanda pressed gauze against the shrapnel wound in his side. "Save the self-flagellation for later. Right now I need you to tell me how bad it is." 6 stitches bad. "Maybe 8. He hissed when she applied pressure. "They knew we were coming. Someone's feeding them information. A mole. Or very good intelligence." He closed his eyes. "Either way, we're exposed. They're coordinated. And I walked into it like an amateur." Amanda finished bandaging him, then sat back on her heels. Looked at this man who'd taught her to shoot, to think strategically, to see the world through the lens of power and survival. Then we need to change tactics, she said. He opened his eyes. You made me a partner, remember? Not a prisoner. Not decoration. She stood, moved to the windows overlooking Atlanta. They're expecting you to react with force. To hit them harder each time. That's what men like you do. Yes. So do something they're not expecting. Like what? Amanda turned back to him, and in her eyes was something new. Something that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. The invisible waitress was gone. In her place stood someone who'd watched empires fight and learned their language. They're hitting your legitimate businesses to make you look weak to the city. Making it seem like you can't protect your own people. She pulled out her phone, opened the Notes app where she'd been tracking the Calabrese movements. But their legitimate businesses are just as vulnerable. Maybe more, because they're new to Atlanta. They don't have the same infrastructure you do. Tae-young sat up straighter, ignoring the pain in his side. You want to attack them legally. I want to destroy them legally, while you destroy them literally. She pulled up a list. They have 4 front companies in Atlanta. A restaurant. A construction firm. A waste management company. A car dealership. All used for laundering money from New York. I know. We've been planning to hit them. Not hit. Expose. Amanda moved closer, her excitement building. Your accountant, Kim Yuna, she's brilliant, right? She can make money disappear? Yes. Then she can make money appear. In the wrong places. In ways that trigger IRS audits. In patterns that look like the Calabrese are cheating the wrong people. Amanda's smile was sharp. You hurt them with violence. I'll hurt them with paperwork. The government will do half our work for us. Tae-young stared at her for a long moment. Then he started to laugh, the sound rough but genuine. You've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about a lot of things. She sat beside him, careful of his injuries. You taught me to see the world differently. To understand power. But I'm not you, Tae-young. I can't walk into buildings with a gun and make people afraid. That's not who I am. No, he agreed softly. You're something more dangerous. You're someone they'll underestimate until it's too late. Over the next 2 weeks, Amanda proved him right. While Tae-young's soldiers engaged the Calabrese in the streets, calculated strikes that kept them occupied and reactive, Amanda worked with Kim Yuna in the war room. They built a case. Manufactured evidence that looked authentic because it was authentic, just strategically incomplete. Anonymous tips to the IRS. Leaked documents to investigative journalists. A paper trail that led federal investigators straight to the Calabrese's door. The waste management company got raided first. Federal agents found discrepancies in their books that didn't exist 3 weeks ago, but appeared in every backup system like they'd always been there. The restaurant followed. Health code violations. Immigration issues. Suddenly their business license was under review. The construction firm lost 3 contracts in 1 week when their history of missed deadlines and cost overruns mysteriously appeared in city databases. And the car dealership? The FBI started investigating them for a fraud scheme that Kim Yuna had designed so brilliantly even Amanda couldn't tell where the real crimes ended and the manufactured ones began. You're good at this, Yuna said one night, reviewing their latest strategy. Scary good. You think like someone who's been doing this for decades. I'm just thinking like someone who's been invisible her whole life, Amanda replied. I know how systems work. How bureaucracies eat themselves. How to make people look where you want them to look while the real damage happens somewhere else. Mr. Kim chose well when he chose to protect you. He didn't choose to protect me. I chose to save him. Amanda met Yuna's eyes. Everything after that was just consequences. But the Calabrese weren't going down without a fight. When they realized someone was systematically destroying their operations, they stopped being subtle. They came after Tae-young's people directly. Not just soldiers, accountants, lawyers, anyone connected to the Kim syndicate. They put a bomb in Lee Min-ho's car. He survived because Amanda had convinced Tae-young to implement new security protocols, including vehicle checks before every trip. They kidnapped one of Yuna's assistants. Tae-young got her back, but the trauma sent a message: nowhere was safe. They burned down an apartment building Tae-young owned, displacing 30 families and killing 2 people who couldn't escape in time. That's when Amanda learned what real war felt like. She was in the penthouse when the news broke, watching footage of firefighters carrying out bodies, watching families stand on the street in their pajamas with nothing but trauma and smoke-stained blankets. She thought she'd understood what Tae-young's world meant, what choosing to stay in it would cost. She'd been wrong. "I did this," she said when Tae-young found her at the window, tears streaming down her face. "My strategy pushed them into a corner, made them desperate. Those people died because Those people died because the Calabrese are animals who burn buildings when they're losing." Tae-young pulled her into his arms, his grip fierce. "This isn't on you. This is on them. And on me for bringing you into this world. I chose to be here. Did you? Or did I make that choice for you when I decided you mattered more than your freedom?" She pulled back, looked at him through her tears. "You gave me 3 days to leave. I chose to stay. That makes this my world too. My responsibility too. Amanda?" "No." She wiped her eyes, forced herself to look at the screen again. At the destruction. At the cost. "If I'm going to be here, if I'm going to be your partner, then I need to own what that means. Even the worst parts." He studied her face, and what he saw there made something shift in his expression. "You're serious." "I've never been more serious." She turned back to him, and her voice was steel. "They think burning buildings will make us back down? Fine. Show me how to make them regret it. Not just with violence. With everything. Make them wish they'd never heard the name Kim Tae-young. Or Amanda Banks?" She smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut. "I'm still invisible to them. Let's keep it that way. Until I'm not." The next operation was Amanda's design entirely. The Calabrese had a weakness. Their connection to New York required constant communication, constant coordination. They used encrypted phones, secure networks, all the technology money could buy. But technology required people to operate it. And people could be manipulated. Amanda identified their IT contractor, a local firm that maintained their network security. She researched the owner, found his weaknesses, his debts, his secrets. Then she approached him not with threats, but with an opportunity. "The people you're working for just killed 2 people in an arson attack," she said, sitting across from him in a coffee shop, looking like nothing more than a concerned citizen. "You maintain their communications network, which means you're an accessory to everything they do with it." The man went pale. I just maintain their servers." "I know. And I know you're a good man. You have 2 kids. A daughter in college. A son in high school. You coach Little League." She slid a folder across the table. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me access to their network. Just a small backdoor. Something they'll never notice. They'll kill me. They'll kill you anyway if the FBI connects you to their operations. And they will. Because federal investigators are already looking at everyone connected to the Calabrese family." She let that sink in. "But if you help us, you get immunity. You get protection. And when this is over, you get a very generous contract maintaining legitimate networks for legitimate businesses. And if I say no?" Amanda's smile was sympathetic but firm. "Then I walk away, and in 3 weeks when the FBI comes knocking, You'll wish you'd said yes to me instead. He gave her the access. Within 24 hours, Amanda and Una had infiltrated every communication the Calabrese family made. Every phone call. Every text. Every email. All of it flowing through their servers, copied, cataloged, analyzed. They learned about a major weapons shipment coming through Savannah. Taeyong's people were waiting at the port. $30 million in illegal firearms seized by federal agents, who received an anonymous tip with precise details. They learned about a meeting with corrupt city officials. Amanda made sure journalists with cameras happened to be in the right place at the right time. They learned about a planned hit on one of Taeyong's restaurants. Taeyong turned it into a trap. The Calabrese lost 8 soldiers in one night. And through it all, the Calabrese never realized they'd been compromised. Never suspected that the invisible waitress, who'd taken a bullet 3 months ago, was now the architect of their destruction. Until it was too late. End of edition number 2. The end came not with a massive battle, but with a phone call. Taeyong received it at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Amanda was beside him in bed, immediately awake when his phone rang because that's what you learned in his world. Sleep light, wake ready. Yes, he answered. Listened. His expression never changed, but his hand found Amanda's in the darkness. He hung up. It's over, he said quietly. Over how? The Calabrese family just recalled all their people from Atlanta. Every soldier. Every associate. Gone by morning. He turned to her, and in the dim light from the city below, she saw exhaustion and relief warring on his face. We won. Amanda sat up. Just like that? They're leaving? We destroyed their infrastructure. Turned federal attention on them. Cost them more money than Atlanta is worth. And, he smiled slightly, the head of their family just learned that someone leaked detailed financial records to 3 separate federal agencies. They have bigger problems than one southern city. Someone leaked their records. Someone brilliant and invisible who understands exactly how to make powerful people destroy themselves. He pulled her close. You did this. Your strategy. Your execution. You beat them without firing a shot. We beat them, she corrected. You kept them occupied while I dismantled them. That's partnership. Yes, he agreed. It is. They lay there in the darkness, listening to Atlanta breathe beyond their windows. A city that had bled for months. A city that would heal now. Because the war was over, and they had survived it. Together. Extended epilogue. 6 months later, Amanda's mama still didn't know the truth. She thought her daughter had gotten promoted at Azure Dragon. Thought the money that suddenly appeared in her account was a bonus. Thought Amanda's new apartment in a safer neighborhood was just good luck. Amanda's brother knew more. He was smart, observant, saw the way men in black SUVs sometimes idled outside their building. But he didn't ask questions. Just accepted the new laptop, the new clothes, the college fund that materialized. And Amanda? She became something new. Not a waitress anymore. Not invisible. Taeyong kept his promises. Taught her to fight, to shoot, to move through his world with confidence instead of fear. But more than that, he gave her real power. Real authority. She sat in war rooms not as decoration, but as strategist. She made decisions that shaped operations across the Southeast. She was learning Korean. Learning the business. Learning how to be powerful in a world that tried to keep her powerless. The syndicate families who'd been skeptical at first learned to respect her. Because while Taeyong was the sword, Amanda became the shield. She protected their operations from legal scrutiny. Anticipated threats before they materialized. Turned their enemies' strengths into weaknesses with nothing but intelligence and strategy. She was good at it. Scary good. And at night, in the penthouse overlooking Atlanta, Taeyong held her like she was precious and told her things he'd never told anyone. "I love you," he said one night, the words rough like they hurt to say. "I know I'm not supposed to. No, it makes me weak. But I love you anyway." She pressed her hand over his heart, felt it beating steady beneath her palm. "Then I guess we're both weak," she said. "Because I love you too." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and she kissed him back with everything she had. Outside, Atlanta glittered like a throne of lights. A city they claimed together. A world they'd survived together. And Amanda thought about that moment in Azure Dragon. 12 seconds to make a choice. Swing the tray or stay invisible. She'd chosen visibility. And it had changed everything. Not just for her, but for everyone who'd underestimated the invisible black woman who learned to see what powerful men couldn't. Who understood that the deadliest weapon wasn't a gun or a knife, but information wielded by someone patient enough to wait for the perfect moment to strike. She'd taken a bullet for a Korean mafia boss. He'd declared war without saying a word. But she'd won it with words alone. And together, they'd built something neither of them had believed possible. An empire that survived not just through fear and violence, but through strategy and loyalty and the fierce protection of what they'd fought so hard to keep. Each other. The end, or maybe just the beginning. Thank you, my fierce hearts, for joining me on this journey. If you loved Amanda and Taeyong's story, smash that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me what you thought. And stay tuned, because in this world, there are always more stories to tell. More dangerous men. More brave women. More moments where everything changes in 12 seconds. Until next time, stay fierce. Stay brave. And never, ever stay invisible.